Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Modern Market. This is our daily show from Monday to Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern Time, 12 p.m. GMT, every day of the week, where we discuss every single thing to do with the modern market. That is the crypto market, the NFT market, and how to make some or a lot of money on the internet. I am Bchek, your host. I'm joined by my legendary co-host, Legendary. And we're going to get into everything that's been going on in the NFT market from the past 24 hours. We cannot wait to do that. Some really, really interesting developments. But before we do that, just a reminder, folks, nothing that we say here is financial advice. This modern market is exceptionally risky. Please do think about things before you do them, exercise some of your own judgment, and you'll probably be fine if you do that. Legendary, with that out of the way, how are you doing this Wednesday, the 17th of January?
I'm doing quite well. What do you mean by think about things before we do them? I always thought it's the other way around. It's pre-order Solana Saga, then think about if it was a good decision or not. Buy NFT, then think about investment thesis. Since when have we flipped the script? That sounds weird.
What does due diligence mean if it doesn't mean thinking about it before? Is there any world in which if the future due diligence is don't think? Can that be the case?
But due diligence can also happen after the fact. I mean,
Can it?
might not make sense all of the time, but you can still reflect on a decision after you made it, and because of the due diligence process, figure out it was a bullshit decision that you made. But it's not tied to doing it before the investment or whatever it is.
I'm literally
I'm in a
Googling
very
that right
Degen
now.
mood. I'm in a
I'm
very Degen
Googling
mood
that
today. I
right
don't know if you can
now.
tell.
I think it's basically like what you just said is false. I think.
Why? You can be diligent after an investment. Not saying that it makes sense. And I also love that I'm wearing
Yeah,
my
but
not financial advice shirt for that. For everyone's watching on YouTube.
yes,
But
but the
it's
due aspect, the due diligence. Diligence, yes, you can be diligent prior, you can be diligent during, you can be diligent after. Diligence, a comprehensive appraisal of a business undertaken by a prospective buyer, especially to establish its assets and liabilities and evaluates its commercial potential. Prospective buyer is a key word, I think. Everything else can happen after. Establish its assets, its liabilities, evaluates its commercial potential. But you are no longer a prospective buyer if you have already bought. That is the lawyer in me getting very loyally. Legendary, how do you respond?
how do I respond to that? What could a good Degen answer be? Because there's so much liquidity in the market, if I buy something, which I can also instantly dump into a bid, I can still think of myself as a prospective buyer after I bought, because I might have not bought with conviction.
I see.
I love the start of the show already.
I see. Okay. So any purchase is not to be considered a real purchase until the due diligence is complete.
Yeah, it's like if you purchase something online in the EU, you have 14 days time to send it back. And it's kind of the same. You have all of the time until you complete your due diligence process to dump that JPEG that you bought back into bits, take a bit of a loss, but you're not a definitive buyer until you decided to actually keep that thing. But in all seriousness, Loopify had that post a couple of days ago that when he spoke a lot about his investments, right? And at one point he said that spraying paint on the wall, trying to figure out a budget for angel investments, etc., makes a lot of sense. Even if it's like smaller 1 to 2K tickets, and you do like 20 or 30 of those, if you can afford to do that, obviously, that might be the better decision than trying to get an informed decision on every single token, every single project. And he posted as of a couple of days ago that his fumbles by not doing all of the projects or rounds that he could have done have now reached a mid 8-figure sum, which is quite absurd to think about.
That is quite absurd. I'm just checking with a few people. I'm seeing a bunch of reactions from people which suggest that audio is working, but it seems like the audio is not working for a few people. Thanks, K-Sensei for sharing a link to the YouTube. But I think we're going okay. Funky, you guys can hear us fine, right?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, cool. So it sounds like confusion. I know you're getting some issues. Jana, Curtis as well. I think you guys are struggling. I think maybe either just leave and come back. Dow Jones says the muted market. That is the new name of the show. Maybe just leave and come back. Hopefully it'll be okay. Or you can join us on YouTube. Maybe that might work better. Twitter Spaces has been being a little bit difficult the last few days, but I think there's nothing wrong on our side. So hopefully that gets cleaned up for you. Legendary, back to what you were saying.
I think Twitter is or X is protecting users to not hear my degen monologue on why to not do due diligence. It's actually X doing our listeners a service. It filtered the degens who can hear that kind of stuff, and it filtered out the people who are not degens who should be protected from my very degenerate speech.
Do you know what I just realized? The people who, Funky, maybe if you could help us out here, whatever I said just now, could you type it to the people in the comments? Because I've just explained to them why they can't hear, but they obviously can't hear me. So if Jack or Funky, if you could please just like tell them, that would be really, really awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, Captain Cap said that thought it was just him, left and came back on mobile a few times, could only get audio on desktop. Okay, so yes, if anyone could just give that extra explanation, nothing that I say here is necessarily going to work. Okay. Okay, let's go. Let's get into the rest of the show. It does seem like everything else should be working okay. Let's get into the headlines and the price action. As always, this is coming from the snapshot, which is pinned up top. It goes out every single day. If you do find that it brings you some value today, please do give it a like. So let's get into it, starting with the price action. We've got Bitcoin at 42.8K, which is flat. ETH at 2.5, up a percent. Solana up 5% at $101. You've got Ape up 12% at 1.6. Maybe something to do with the Dookey Dash announcement, which we're going to get into. First, we have Crypto Undead's floor sitting at 13 Sol with 6.7 million first day volume. Number two, got Yuga Labs Gaming announcing Dookey Dash 2.0 and Gaming Council. Going to get into that. That seems pretty important. And finally, very, very interesting, Blast Testnet live with DApp competition to get in front of 100,000 users, and now 1.3 billion locked into Blast. Want to talk about the incentive structure there. So that will be very interesting to discuss. They are the kings. My whole computer is freezing as well at the same time. Getting into the notable sales and floor prices, we've got CryptoPunks at 58.3, Bored Apes down a few percent at 23.9, Mutants at 4.4, DGods at 3, Captains at 4.5, Azuki's flat at 6.8, Penguins still as high as 14.1, Moonbirds at 1.1, and Nouns winning bid was at 8.7 ETH. We had a really interesting CryptoPunk bidding war happen yesterday. I don't know if you saw this, Legendary, or if anyone else saw this. Punk's OTC decided to do a bidding war where he said he would sell this spinner cap CryptoPunk, which is considered normally to be one of the most valuable ones, and they sold it. They said, we're going to keep doing bids. I'm going to accept the top bid so long as there's not another higher bid after 30 minutes. And so he started the bidding quite low. It was like 40, 50 ETH, went up to 134 ETH in the end, $347,000. And we also saw a Pudgy Penguin Gold selling for 40 ETH. That is $102,000. That is the headlines. That is the price action. Legendary. If you could just talk a little bit about some of the interesting price action that you see, any numbers jumping out to you. I want to try and deal with some of these comments as well. Appreciate Kusho and Funky and K-Sensei kind of dealing with some of these in the comments, but we just want to try to do that. But what numbers are jumping out to you?
Yep, also pinned my comment that X audio is working for some, so everyone can see it who cannot hear us. I definitely saw the Punks auction. I saw it because you reposted it, because I think Punks OTC said he's going to give away 1 ETH to everyone to one of the persons reposting that. So this is why it actually got my attention. But in terms of the numbers that really stood out for me, it is the Pudgy Penguins again. The floor did creep up to 14.5 ETH. It is very thin on its way up to 15 ETH. I think it's less than 10 sales. And also the top bid is still sitting strong at 14.1 ETH on Blur. So that pump that didn't correct and is still holding strong, still sees upwards momentum, is pretty impressive.
Yeah, I think Pudgies just seem to be completely consolidated there, right? Like they're not going down. There was this interesting statistic I saw someone share, and I think this is what we do a lot. We look at the historical price action of things and we try to trace it into the future to see if the same thing could happen again. It was something wild. I'd need to double check it, but like as soon as Bored Apes went past 14 ETH, there was some very low number of a small amount of time that it took for it to then like really explode upwards. Do you think, Legendary, that Pudgy Penguins are, I mean, they've already exploded up, right? They've already exploded up in the last few weeks. Do you think we could see a further explosion?
I think we could see a further explosion potentially. I mean, the move from 12 to 14 ETH was mainly caused by a single person. You definitely have a couple of very prominent and wealthy Pudgy holders. And I mean, now we also have, so my thinking initially before the Dookey Dash announcement and the more positive sentiment that we've seen on apes and the token and the NFTs over the last, like, say, 2 to 3 days was, if the downward momentum were to continue for apes, and by that factor, the gap between upwards moving Pudgies and downwards moving apes were to become even narrower, I could see a world where some people would love to put a couple milli in, sweep penguins as holders already, just to be able, even if it's for a day, for an hour, whatever the time amount would be, just to be able to flip the apes. That was in a world where the loans and everything were still underwater, would have been a very bullish narrative to be able to post that. And I think also because we saw that person moving the floor essentially almost by themselves from 12 to 14 ETH. And obviously when you have those big movements, as we spoke about Machi Big Brother yesterday, with him buying Blur, dumping Ape, other people are copy trading that. I think it is a very similar situation with JPEGs, where we have people watching whales and copying their behavior. So I think given that fact, given also the current strength of the bids, I think there's 25 bids at the 14.1 ETH point that I just mentioned. There is still room for upwards movement, and there could be a scenario where that movement could be very explosive. But it could also be a continuous sideways movement, could also correct. It's just, as always, pure speculation what could happen. But from a probabilistic thinking model, I can't rule out an explosive upwards movement, because there are a couple theses and ways to achieve that would make sense in my opinion.
Yeah, I kind of think, Jack, I see the hand raise, want to get to you in just a second. My thought is that I think when things start to break out and you kind of go into price discovery, and especially with these very expensive goods, once they kind of get established as something that loads of people want and loads of people like, then it's like, well, what is the difference between 14 ETH and 20 ETH? What is the difference between 20 and 30 ETH? And I know, like, practically there's a big difference between those things. But the point is that, as you know, with lots of these things, the more expensive they get, the more desirable they become. And people are just looking in the market to try to find the things which are concretely viewed as very high status, very desirable. And once you start to break out to these levels, yeah, I agree that there's a reasonable chance that we do go much higher from here for the Pudgies, because, well, yeah, we're just in price discovery now. And I frankly, I don't remember any. Has there been a collection that's been like stuck in between the 10 to 20 range? I feel like anything that's ever been there has just rocketed higher. or you're beneath that, or you just go higher. Can you think of anything that's been like for a
I
long
mean,
time in
the
between 10 and
degots
20?
degots have been pretty close to or have been at 10 ETH.
They were at 10.
And
That was more like
they were at,
sticking towards the
yeah,
10,
yeah, exactly.
not
But
being able
it
to
didn't
break
break
out.
out to like 12, 13, 14, and they couldn't hold that 10 price point for a really long time. So definitely agree with you. I mean, that's exactly, how Veblen goods work.
Yeah, it's
The
almost like 10 to 20 ETH doesn't exist. It's like if you're
Yeah,
going to be 12, then you're just going to be 20. If you're going to be if you're going to hold on to 10, then you're probably going to go lower because you won't be able to hold on to it. I don't know if
I
that
like
makes
I
any
like
sense.
I like the very I like again I like that I'm where I can't talk today, that I'm wearing my non-financial advice t-shirt, especially when you say things like 10 to 20 ETH doesn't exist. If it's a 12 ETH, it's gonna be a 20 ETH.
Well,
No, but I understand where you're coming from, and again, my perspective on that is, and I'm really curious to hear from Jack as well, that if Pudgies were to move to 18 ETH and the gap between apes and Pudgies is only 4 ETH, there will be so much interest in the collection to just pump it the touch higher. It's only 20% from that point to flip apes,
mm,
right?
yeah, I think that will play a factor. At some point in time, that will play a factor too, because
Yeah,
it's an entertaining outcome and people will want to make it happen, even if it's just for a moment, right? Because if you remember when Bored
exactly.
Apes,
It
like,
doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how long it is. It was the same with punks and apes. When apes
exactly.
flipped punks for the first time, apes flipped punks, then punks flipped them back. And every time that happened, it was a trending topic on the timeline, no matter if it was for a day, 1 hour, a month, or whatever the amount of time was.
Yeah, too many people will find it entertaining to happen if it gets closer. I like that line of thinking. Jack, your hand's been raised. Welcome to the stage, my friend. What are you thinking on the Pudgy Penguins breakout, price discovery, and potential flipping of apes?
Yeah, honestly, I've had this theory for a long time. It's not really even a theory. It just seems to play out, at least in the last bull cycle. When ETH starts ripping, this is when the big moves happen. And I think we saw it on Sol. We saw what happened to Mad Lads, Klanos, etc. when Sol started ripping. And I think it's just as simple as like a self-fulfilling prophecy that, okay, the token goes higher, therefore people look at that will garner attention to the underlying token when it rips, like I think ETH 15% in the past month. When that happens, people look at that, they get that attention, and they look for shit coins, or they look to NFTs as to how to get the level of ETH that they want through not actually just DCAing, which is probably the smarter move. And I think that's all that is happening right now is ETH runs up 20%, 15%, 20%, whatever it might be. Pudgies has ran 40 to 50% in the same 30-day period. And people see that, and then it's like, okay, so there is a good bet on my Ethereum. Here's like a fairly solid bet at this point because people start looking for the blue chips. And then I completely agree that, like, on the longer term horizon, or even the really short term horizon, actually, I would not be surprised if it happened in the next 30 days. Pudgies just keeps ripping because, look, if I'm a Pudgy holder, this doesn't have to be mass purchasing event. This just has to be a delisting event. And I think if I'm holding a Pudgy to sell it into a pump, I still think it's a smarter play to delist my Pudgy for now. Let the flippening happen because you're going to get a higher return if that flippening happens. Because again, it garners more attention to Pudgies, and people are going to know that narrative is going to be successful for sales. So even people who do want the floor and believe that the top's in, it just makes more sense to just let it run to that point and then list 20% higher than maybe you've got it listed right now, even if that is significantly under the 8th floor. I think that will just inevitably happen in the coming days.
Yeah, I like that take. I wonder what, if anyone, I mean, I know when certain takes get very popular, they start to become a bit consensus and maybe it becomes too obvious. But I'd love to know if people, if there are any people left who just do not think that at all at the moment, because it seems like there's a strong momentum of people who think that they're probably going higher. They're probably going to want to flip apes at some point in time. So just very, very interesting to observe that price action and that activity, and interested to see where we shake out with that stuff. We are going to get into some of the headlines in just a second, but Just a reminder before we do that, we want to shout out today's sponsor. Today's sponsor is Gondi, the premier NFT lending protocol, where smart lenders can refinance NFT loans and smart borrowers can get steady rates against their best NFTs, buy now, pay later, and eradicate potential liquidations with the sell and repay feature. We're going to showcase that feature a little bit later, so stick around for that. Legendary, let's get into one of the headlines. We've got Crypto Undeads, we've got Yuga Labs Gaming, we've got Blast Testnet. Where do you want to go first today?
Let's go to Crypto Undeads.
Yes, let's do it. Do you want to set it up? Do you want to explain what happened? A bit of the price action first. If people have been completely under a rock, just what is this collection? What did the founder say with us yesterday for the people who missed that show? And then what happened with the price action in the last kind of 12 to 15 hours?
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very happy to do that. We had an impromptu appearance by Dollar, the founder, yesterday on our show, where Dollar made it very, very clear that Crypto Undeads is a branding play. It is a branding playbook that they are following. There's no gaming, no blockchain building, no layer 2 solutions, et cetera, coming. It is purely focused on gaming. We've seen a lot of interest in the collection, dominating the timeline. We've seen offers going up to 24 Sol before the trading was enabled yesterday in the evening. Again, multi-phase process with those people who were able to participate in the pre-sale, getting their Crypto Undead airdropped with an allow list. Most of the collection was distributed via allow list and pre-sale, and then with the public part of it. And the collection did an amazing volume. It did, where is it? Up to 68.4K Solana. So that's, what is it, 7 mil? Yeah, almost 7 mil at the current prices. 7 mil, currently standing at a 14 Sol floor price. It did essentially go down since mint. It went lower than that, bounced back a bit. Currently, we see 13.5% out of the 10K Crypto Undeads listed on Magic Eden. And if you look at the owner structure, there's more than 52% unique owners in that collection. And we also saw an announcement by Crypto Undead saying that their story starts as of next Tuesday. One additional thing that I noticed on the timeline, a couple of people pointed that out, is that there have been a couple of sales significantly above the floor, which led to speculations if the metadata was leaked. I think we saw some at 30, 40-ish Sol selling. I didn't find any clarification on that, but it's just something that a couple of people pointed out, that a very specific person made, I don't know, like a handful of purchases at multiples of the floor price, which led to the speculation that metadata potentially might have leaked, but we don't have, at least I don't have any additional context or clarity on that.
Good point, starting to address the FUD. Excellent summary in general. So I think that's a very helpful summary in general. In terms of the price action, these whitelist spots were selling for like 20-ish Sol at one point in time. Obviously, the price now is beneath that. It's dipped to around 14 Sol, which is where the floor is now. Good summary on a bit of the FUD. The FUD has stemmed from a little bit of suspicion that maybe some metadata has been leaked. The founder came out and definitively said that is literally not possible. I don't know if you listened to his audio clip that he posted.
Oh, no, I didn't listen to that. Thank you for pointing it out.
Yeah, so he said that is, according to him, completely impossible. They haven't even generated the stuff yet, so it's not okay for so it's not possible for anyone to be sniping particular things. And the second piece of FUD on the timeline has been to do with the pre-sales, where a number of people, and this is actually not ideal, a number of people who had bought pre-sales spots were left empty-handed. So they had paid their money. Shout out to Lelio for sharing this tweet from the Undead's team, which went out 25 minutes ago. They said there are no undead left behind. All outstanding pre-sales are being honored and airdropped over the next 24 hours. So what happened was, I think that there was a bunch of people who had paid in. The time where this stuff was going live came around and they just still hadn't received them. So they say, overnight, our team spent many hours reviewing the data and worked out the cause. Through that process, we calculated that 608 tokens were not airdropped as they should have been. That's quite a lot. 608 people bought at 2.5 Sol, was it? That's like 1,500 Sol, which is legendary 1,500 Sol. Oh,
150K.
Yeah. So quite a lot, quite a reasonable amount of the collection was not airdropped. But it looks like they're dealing with it. I'm just trying to see how they're dealing with it. It would be easy for us to simply refund those pre-sales, but we're taking a different approach and ensuring everyone is made whole on their desire to own a crypto undead. So for that reason, we committed 300 NFTs from our treasury and spent over 3,000 Sol to buy back the supply required to have everyone taken care of. That's pretty. What do you think about that? That's the big headline there, I think, Legendary. They committed 300 NFTs from our team treasury to give to these 600 affected people, and plus 3,000 Sol to get the other 300 tokens required to make these people whole with an NFT in their hands. What do you think of that response?
I think it's a very good response. I think if we're going by what Dollar said in our spaces yesterday, and his point was you need a certain level of attention momentum to kickstart a brand and kickstart playing out the branding strategy. And if from the get-go you have 608 people who are just pissed at you and will continue to FUD you on the timeline because they didn't get their pre-sale, your hand is almost forced to do that. You have to be like, okay, we made a mistake, we fucked up, we have to spend those 300K and allocate 300 undeads from our treasury to those people to make them whole. Gives you good press on the one hand, and also make sure that you don't have a army of disgruntled ex-posters who will try everything to stop your branding playbook from working out.
Yeah, 600 is a lot of people to be unhappy. Realistically, like in this space, 600 is a hell of a lot of people to leave without their allocation. And I know we say, like, one of the things Dollar was emphasizing yesterday was fairness, making sure like a variety of people got this. It wasn't just 600 of like everyone. There was some like very influential people in addition who also didn't get that. So I think it made sense to, from every perspective, I think it made sense to try to get these NFTs in their hands. One thing I do wonder though, and I see Samo with their hand raised, Funky, Jack, we're going to get to you in just 1 second. One thing I do wonder though is, damn, like you're just going to give these NFTs to the people. I wonder what proportion of them just get completely dumped into all of these bids. Like that's a lot of money to facilitate that happening. So I don't know. We'll have to see how that plays out. Legendary, I want you to think about where you think the price could move from here. And especially, I want to ask you, I know you're holding yours because maybe you flipped bullish after our conversation with the founder yesterday. We want to discuss that a little bit, but let's hit some hands first. Samo, welcome to the stage. I believe this is the first time speaking with us. What are your thoughts on the response from the Crypto Undeads team?
Jim, I hope you guys can hear me.
Yep, we can.
Cool. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure and an honor. What I wanted to say is that I was one of the 608 wallets of people, right? And I tried to make sense last night, like, what the hell happened here? What's next? But I think they needed, for the whole, let's say, premium period, they needed like a better comms. I would have loved last night from Dollar like an attitude of, okay, we don't know what happened, we're gonna investigate. Like the message they sent this morning, I think it would have been like much better last night, even without the details, because maybe they didn't know the whole extent of the failure, right?
Sure.
So in my opinion, they needed better comps, and 608 is like 6% of their total supply, right?
Sure.
Plus, these are their let's say their first pick. These guys, these whole communities were their first pick. They got pre-sale, right?
Yes.
Not whitelist, pre-sale. So they were their first pick, and I don't think they had any other, let's say, option here than make everyone whole.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think everything that you just said there seems quite coherent. I agree with you. And that distinction as well between pre-sale and whitelist, like I know there's various stages now as part of these mints, but as you said, these are the people who should have been taken care of completely, like stage number one, right? So I think I agree with you there. And ultimately, look, I know you said, ideally they would have came out and said this yesterday, but sometimes, in the mess of a situation, it can be a bit hard to do that. At least they've done it now and kind of made that clear. So I agree with you there, Samo. Thank you for that. Let's go to
Look,
Samo. Do you want to come back?
yeah, I wanted to say something. The thing is, if you prepare for these things, because they will happen. Nobody's perfect. I think even today it's hard to get a mint perfect, right? From
For sure.
0 to 100, right? It's like one chance in maybe 100 or 1000. But if you prepare for that, like you have a communication channel, right? You don't get into that situation where you just push people, send us some DMs on Twitter that will never reply, because this was the issue, right?
Yeah, of course. This
They
is,
never.
this is the thing though, Samo. Like, yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I think in an ideal world, people would have like contingency plans. They would have disaster management things in place. I mean, eight's about 7 times out of 10. I think a lot of projects fall way short of any kind of acceptable consumer standards anyway. But I think this is probably a bridge too far for those people. So I'd be more lenient in my reading and say like, yes, in an ideal world you would have had those things, but at least they got it done like overnight. That would be my kind of concluding take there. Funky, your hand is raised. What is your thought here?
Largely agree with everybody. I think they did the right thing. I just wanted to come in because of the point that you made, especially with them putting their money on the line, the team, and having to buy these things off the market so they can fulfill these orders. Yes, it is good press, as you guys already noted. But to your point, some people are just going to dump, right? Like you're sitting on a 5X immediately, just overnight. So, I mean, I think that they had to do that knowing that there are people who are going to flip these, right? Just because it's an easy flip. The hype was there. But at the end of the day, I think kudos goes to the team because they did the right thing. And I just wanted to share that too.
Fair enough. I think that's very fair. Just a quick note before we go to Jack. I know a lot of people have had to switch over to YouTube today because Twitter is being difficult. So if you are having any audio issues, just remember we run this every day on X and on YouTube. And if you are over there on YouTube, please do subscribe to the channel. We're building things out there. We're doing clips every single day on YouTube Shorts, which also get published as shorts on X as well. So please do subscribe. It's good stuff, and you get to see a bit more visual stuff at the same time. Jack, let's go to you. What are your thoughts?
Well, first, just goated response to X playing silly buggers on the timeline, not letting people hear. I was one of them. I couldn't hear when I got onto X into the spaces, but as soon as you brought me up to speak, then I could hear everything. So
interesting.
Definitely something going on with X as opposed to like anything to do with the mics or end. Look, I think with Undeads, look, it's clearly the only reaction they could have had, but it's not a net positive in my opinion for the fact that those funds have just come out of whatever they had planned. Like yes, they they're talking about a brand play, they're talking about IP play, which in one respect isn't building out a game. Like the cost of that maybe isn't as significant, but yeah, that money has come out of whatever the strategy was after launch. I do think it's taken a bit of the momentum away from the project as well. Like people seeing that on the timeline, as you say, there's like some really prominent figures like Easy Eats Bodega commented about it, like one of the biggest names in Solana, that he didn't get his pre-sale. And then when I looked at the comments to that post, it was a bunch of really ghosted individuals. So it was like really the worst sort of people you want to leave out of that. I think they can still turn it around. The metadata issue, like the idea like there's been a sweep. I think they mentioned that it was like actually like a third party. It was like Helio, which was the issue with the pre-sale. I think that was on the founder's account. Which will be interesting to see if they can claw any of those funds back. But overall, yeah, well, what I saw there was a net negative. I would anticipate a little bit of negative sort of price action in the coming days.
Yeah, I mean, look, the way this would work, if everyone was a professional organization taking things really seriously, you'd have service agreements with these other third parties to deliver a particular service. And if you are now how much sold down, so they spent over 3,000 sold down, and as you say, that is not good. Like, I know we're saying, okay, it's good that they did the right thing, but that's still 3,000 sold out of their treasury. And it's 3,000 sold out of their treasury because of a mistake and an error by a third party who they had contracted with to fulfill a specific role. And so that means that's 3,000 sold, which should be recovered from the third party who made the mistake, because that's completely unacceptable for you to professionally contract someone, take payment for something, and then leave the original person down 3,000 soul. So basically, in exchange for us contracting you to do a job and we'll pay you for that, you've extracted 3,000 soul from us as a consequence of your negligence. So that is not good. I actually very much agree with that, Jax. Thank you for bringing that up. Legendary, Samo, I know you want to come in on this. I have to go to Legendary, and we've actually got two really, really important things that I also want to get to today. So we might not be able to get to you, but hopefully you can come in on the next topics. Legendary.
Couple of points and a bit of alpha. So first of all, service agreements made me laugh because this space loves to operate without any kind of contracts. And I remember a very specific situation where I was working with a dev and I actually wanted to have a contract. And the dev started to insult me and was like, fuck you, this is why I left Web2, to not have to deal with this corporate bullshit, yada, yada, yada. So this is when you mentioned service agreements, I had to laugh. A second point, the alpha, if you look on the homepage and you look at the We Are Hiring tab.
Oh, I was going to say this.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, right? You can see that the team's already looking to hire 4 roles, and they're quite interesting. Well, A, brand lead, B, ecosystem manager, C, front-end developer, and D, token economist. So that was a bit outstanding. And I'm interested, I'm really curious to see if they're really wanting to hire a token economist, because they are aware that, you know, if they put this on the homepage, people will read it, people will speculate on that there might be a token. So if this is something you really want to do, or is it just strategically putting out that you hire a token economist on the website so people can speculate on the token, right? But going with what Dollar said yesterday and how he values fairness and transparency, if we go by that, the assumption would be that this is not a high play, but they're actually, well, considering to design a token.
That's a funny kind of psyop thought. I appreciate that. One funny comment from Mr. Yellow on YouTube, this made me laugh for a second, said, first, love Web3 where you can launch a business and just say it's a brand play. And he said, this made me think a little bit more. A brand is something you become by building a successful business. Like, the business is first, the brand develops and becomes bigger as a consequence of the strength of whatever business it is.
Yes and no.
What do you think about that?
In most cases, yes, but there's, I don't know, look at something like streetwear, where you literally start with a brand and you have to formulate a brand vision, formulate brand appeal, and try to build something. Of course, you start with a collection and that is the product, but it's so heavily brand driven and design, communication, branding driven that you can't start without having that brand fundamentals together. And I would say in Web3 for NFTs, there is projects that are not a brand play in the first instance, but if it's all you really want to focus on, then you do have to start with a concept for your brand first before you actually have built out a business.
Fair enough. Final question on this, Legendary, for you. We obviously had Dollar on the show yesterday kind of pulled up without us knowing, did a nice little interview segment. A lot of people flipped bullish who listened to the show just because he seemed like quite an eloquent, smart person. What's your reflection on that? Obviously, you're holding 1 or 2 or something. I don't know. What's like? How's that? How did that conversation affect your thinking?
That I can answer very, very specifically. Before I had heard Dollar speaking, I was willing to dump all of my crypto undeads at around like 20 Sol, because I was like, okay, this is where trading probably will start. That was at the point before offers were coming in and the whitelists were going for 18 Sol. And after I heard Dollar speak, I was like, okay, if they for some reason pump to like 30-ish Sol before the reveal, or whenever, then I will basically sell all but one. So he did increase my price target by 50% by speaking on our show.
Interesting. So definitely bought some time and increased the price target.
Yep. But again, not financial advice.
Of course. But I think maybe the key reflection is not really related to the project. It's just that, wow, like if you are able to speak well in front of a group of people, that can have such a profound effect on people. That was my key takeaway from yesterday's show. Okay, very, very interesting. I feel like we've dealt with crypto undeads sufficiently. A final comment from Samo saying that one of the points they made was that they publicly said that trading would start after everyone got their tokens, and they failed on that too. So definitely a few issues in general with the whole process yesterday. It seems like they're doing their best to correct some of them today. We'll see whether the market accepts those corrections and is as bullish on them as the people who heard that Australian voice yesterday. Okay, let's get into the next headline. We've got a few minutes to do. I think we should do Yuga first, Legendary, then we'll do Blast. I think Blast is kind of interesting. Oops, that's Dollar. Let's get to the Yuga announcement. Do you want to do this one? Do you want to set it up? Or do you want me to?
Happy if you can set this one up.
Okay, so it sounds like Yuga Gaming have made a pretty big announcement. Dookey Dash is coming back. Legendary, if you could change the title at the same time. Play. This is not exclusive to any particular NFT holders. This time anyone can play. Token benefits there will be for Bored Apes, Mutant Apes, Coders, Kennel Clubs, and Heavy Metals. And that's basically all the information that was shared so far. In conjunction with this, there was an announcement that all kinds of people have been brought in onto this Yuga Gaming Council. Not specifically only gaming people. There seem to be some very prominent influencer type people in addition. Legendary, what did you think of Dookey Dash coming back first and foremost? Because I think that's the key headline. And then second, the strategy of partnering with a variety of gamers, but also just more general kind of NFT Twitter influencers as well.
I think the timeline obviously liked it. Ape holders did like it. Ape did move up, as you said, by 13-14% on the day. Mm-hmm. I think also the part that they want to make that an esports compatible format with tournaments, etc., coming up. Yeah, I mean, it was a popular game. It's obviously not an original game, right? That they came up with. They are now bringing it back. The community has asked for that for quite a long time. So it's good to see that. It could be a game that works very, very well on the app stores if they have a solid marketing strategy for that, which I do think they have or will have in place for that. I don't think that if people are hoping for this to be the mass onboarding event where everyone gets onboarded into the either NFT ecosystem or Yuga Labs ecosystem by playing the new version of Dookey Dash, that won't play out. So it is a good news, but it's not something, as you can probably tell from my reaction, that gets me like giga hyped or anything. It's solid.
I think that's fair enough. We want to get a little bit more into that because I've got some takes on that too. But just before we do that, another shout out to our sponsor, Gondi, the premier NFT lending protocol trusted by legendary collectors Seed Phrase, G-Funk, Tony Herrera, Phantom Scribbler, and Mooncat. Today, we showcase Gondi's unique sell and repay feature, which no other NFT lending protocol had implemented before them. Sell and repay essentially eradicates defaulting on loans if the value of your asset is more than the loan you took out. This works, for example, with you borrowing 7 ETH on a 10 ETH asset and you need to pay back the 7 ETH plus interest tomorrow, but you don't have the cash. Normally, you would lose the asset automatically via smart contract if you do not have the cash to pay back the 7 ETH loan plus interest. But with Gondi, you can accept a buy offer on the asset and keep any excess. This is great because if the asset has gone up in value, is now worth 12 ETH and has 9 ETH bids on it, by using the sell and repay feature, you can both pay back the 7 ETH plus interest and keep the extra 2 ETH from the sale. A lot of numbers in there, Legendary, but what do you think of that type of innovation?
It's a very convenient feature, I would say. Like, it is essentially a hedge, right? If you take out a loan and your, I don't know, like say your Pudgy Penguin, for the sake of an example, goes down and you default on that, and you know the loan that you took out might be even worth more than the Pudgy Penguin floor price at the point where you default, that's good for you. And now if the Pudgy Penguin price is ripping, which is the reality as we talked about, and your loan is about to default, then you can capture the upside from the pump and close your loan in one single go. And that's quite convenient. It's a pretty cool feature.
Absolutely. Pretty cool stuff. So if you are interested, head over to Gondi XYZ on Twitter or head to their website or jump in their Discord to learn more. Back into the Dookey Dash thing. I had a big take on this yesterday. I think it's really, really good. And it was interesting. One of the things you said, Legendary, was it's not an original game. And I think this is what a lot of people, any of the critics of it, want to try to talk about, how it's not an original game. It's not some complicated thing. And I don't think it was appreciated enough at the time, but I think people look back on Dookey Dash with like quite fond memories now. And yeah, I get it. It's not an original game. It's not like hyper complicated, but I think people look back on it now and think, wow, that was a lot of fun. That was a lot of fun. It got a lot of outside people really interested in the space. It got people really hyped up. It had a competitive element. It did everything that people wanted it to do, I think. And again, it's not a complicated thing. They've obviously got something far more complicated happening with the other side, those trips happening there. But I think it's really, and I specifically think people look back on it way better now than they felt about it experiencing it at the time. Quick thought on that from you, Legendary, then want to go to Jack.
Yeah, no, that's a very fair point. But I also think from the price and reward mechanisms, Dookey Dash with the sewer passes has been executed really well, like from the financial incentivization. And from then, I mean, I back then also had people play for me to achieve a good high score, and that was financially a very smart thing to do. So I think in our space we do have to factor that in, that if you have a solid strategy around Dookey Dash, you could have made a lot of money with the 4 tiers of passes. So that's definitely adding to the fondness of the memory, because my personal experience was, I played the game again, nice Temple Run clone, was fun to play for a while, didn't get too competitive, got a pro gamer to play for me on multiple passes, made a good amount of ETH on that. And that certainly added to my fondness, of the memory of Dookey Dash.
Fair enough. I think that probably does stimulate the fondness for sure. Jack, quick final take on this because we want to hit the blast news as well.
Yeah, I just think for me, like looking back to that time, it was one of the most euphoric like moments in the space for a long time during the bear. Like it was such a fun game, even just to watch it on the sidelines, which I did. I am really interested to see how they go about this release that they've now opened it up to everyone. I don't expect to see it on like an app store or anything with like the purchase moment, but I do think to like Pudgy Penguins and to the NFT space more generally, where like a big part of this space is using the NFT holders and like the wider ecosystem to really blow up an immediate release of plushie toys, for example, for the purchases that made it hit, number one on Amazon for sales in 24 hours. I wonder what that does to this sort of game if it did hit the App Store long term. I'm really bullish on this as an event. I think it will be very, very cool, and I can't wait to play.
Yeah, interesting point you just made there. The way you spoke about it, you didn't call it in a game, you called it an event. And I think that's one of the things that's happening in the gaming ecosystem, or at least one of the things that one direction people can go is, right, okay, fine, we have a game here, but let's turn this thing into an absolute event that takes place over a certain period of time. That's what's really going to get the timeline excited. Yes, there will be financial incentives involved. Yes, people will make a lot of money. You take all of that and mix it together, and I think you get something which people will really enjoy. So I'm not too fussed about the fact it's not a complicated game, that it's straightforward or any of that stuff. I think on reflection, it went really well last time. Even if there were some things that need to get ironed out, I think I'm bullish on that announcement. And the 8 price seems to have moved kind of in line with that. We want to get into Blast today because Blast is obviously attracted so much mindshare, so much capital. Legendary, do you want to set this up, or do you want me to go through some of the details of what's been announced?
100% want to set this one up. Blast announced multiple things, one of which was that their testnet is officially live. So that is obviously a good thing, right? And as part of that, they also announced that they have a competition going on for devs who want to get their dApps on Blast. And they made quite a strong argument about that. They said they have 100K users, $1.3 billion in TVL, and this is your chance to get in front of all of those people, in front of all of that capital. And as part of the competition, there's going to be a jury who decides which dApps will be the winners. The winners will then be promoted very, very prominently to Blast users upon the mainnet launch, which is bound to happen in late February. And they also did put in an additional reminder in, which I think is very relevant, to the airdrop distribution, namely that half of the airdrop allocation is reserved for devs, and that marks one of the largest distributions to date as of their announcement. And then they made the very, very, very strong statement that where is it in the thread? Yeah, that there's millions of dollars of capital waiting to use the mainnet and use your dApp if you're one of those winners, and you will basically have, if you win this competition or if you're one of the winners, you will have a multi-million-dollar protocol, judging by TVL.
Really, really. I've got a lot of thoughts on this. The only thing I would add in addition is that there are 8 categories in the competition. Each category will have its own set of dApps and winners. Late stage and early stage projects will be judged separately. Projects will be evaluated on their concept, execution, and Blast native features. So the 8 categories are perp dexes, spot dexes, lending protocols, NFTs and gaming, social-fi, gamble-fi, infrastructure, and miscellaneous. So this is like, I don't know what your headline thought on this, Legendary, is, and we've only got a couple minutes left, so we can't go on forever. But this just is so good. Like, it's so good that they've thought about this a bit more than this typical layer 2, layer 1, whatever, where, look, if you were a dev in any of these other things, and I've been looking into it a little bit recently because we've obviously got some airdrops coming from some L2s, and the way that you need to figure out how to build on a particular thing, on a particular L2 at the moment, is to like fill in some form. You get put into private contact with someone there, but there's no like, maybe there's behind the scenes, there's some like exposure and pushing people around and helping people out. But it just doesn't seem like, it just seems so much of a better thing to do something way more public. It's kind of like building in public on steroids. Even the people who don't win might get some exposure here. I don't know how it will work perfectly, but again, I think it's just another example of them being absolutely on top of the incentive structures and really, really nailing that, making sure that people are appropriately incentivized to play in their game. What do you think, Legendary?
Yeah, marketing-wise, it's a very, very strong play. If you think about the typical, here's our grant program, you can apply for a grant, yada, yada, yada. Or even if you think about some L2s that did have a portion of the airdrop allocated for devs building, whether that's Optimism or other L2s, just saying, hey, half of that airdrop is for people who build a dApp on Blast, and we will have this competition going, is a smart marketing play.
Absolutely agree on that one. Guys, we have run out of time for today's show. So that is very, very unfortunate, but don't worry, because we'll be back tomorrow, Thursday, the 18th of January, to run it all back again. Thank you so much, Legendary, for co-hosting with me as always. Thank you to our listeners on X. I know you were dealing with a bunch of troublesome issues. So thank you for joining us as always. Remember, you can follow the Modern Market account. And if you don't know where the audio is coming from, because the audio comes from the Modern Market account, I'm Bcheck. You can follow me. You can follow Legendary, who is also co-hosting. And thank you to all the people who switched over to YouTube for the first time. Remember, we're building out that Modern Market YouTube account at the moment. We do YouTube clips. We're doing clips on X as well. Please do subscribe on YouTube to support us if you are so inclined. Have a wonderful day, everyone. We will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.